So anyway, so the Things Lab is an artist-led, socially engaged, participatory project that I also consider to be a startup nonprofit, because as we define like what we are, we're not fully incorporated as a nonprofit yet, because our approach was to do a 6-month trial and see if we wanted, like, if we thought it would be viable to move forward as a nonprofit. And I guess we haven't officially talked about it, my collaborator and I, which is Carrie Phillips, but I think we both feel that we're going to move forward because we've just had a lot of interest and a lot of things are coming out of it, which I'll share with you now. So yeah, so I created it basically by myself and Carrie Phillips. And this is, I don't have any slides on this, but basically the history of it is that it came from a big project that we did at the Deering Estate, which was to 2100, which was set in the future. It presumed that Miami was pretty much underwater, and that the Deering Estate is actually on the Atlantic coastal ridge, so it's actually pretty high, even though it's right next to the bay. So the premise was that the Deering Estate had been converted into a co-housing facility, and that people from all over the world were living there. But there was no more Target, and there was no more, Walmart or all these stores. So people used to buy at a store like the Things Lab. And I commissioned Carrie Phillips. I worked with a lot of artists, about 15 theater artists and 15 visual artists, and they all help shape the world. So I was wearing the hat as an artist, but also as a curator and producer. And so with Carrie, I approached her because she works with things, and actually, oh, I guess you guys can see it, but for those that are here, and we'll get it part of the tour, there's the wall right there is actually what we're calling a painting by Carrie, which is all made up of cushions. And so this is very much like what her work is like. So I approached her about doing something like the Things Lab, which at the moment it was called the What's Its Emporium and Library of Things. And what was really important to me was to have this library of things, but also make it like a thrift store. So we did that, and it was very successful during the event, and even afterwards when we had museum goers come in, and I realized it was a great platform to have conversations about climate change. So that led me to think we really need to do this in the community, and there's really nothing like it, so let's make that happen. So that was in February 2022, and then I had a lot of health complications in a space in Havana right next to Horizon, and we were almost ready to space, literally. And this space in Little River that you guys are going to see came up. An artist recommended our project as to the property owner, and they were interested in having some sort of sustainable project here. So anyway, we negotiated a very good deal that I couldn't turn away. Now, the only thing that I don't like about the space is that it's not public facing, super public facing. So we still have a storefront, but it's harder to connect with the community. So right next to Healthy Little Havana, it would have been really easy because people are just walking there all the time. I also know the community. I lived there for a long time. So it felt like a better fit, but we couldn't really say no to this, So now we're looking at ways of how do we engage with the community, because that's a lot harder here than it would have been in Little Havana. But what we realized is we need to get everything. We have to get like all the ducks in a row and all of the I's dotted and all the T's crossed before we even take that step, because a lot of things are just coming up. And as we're doing it, we're learning as we're doing it and learning what works, what doesn't work, etc. So it's a long, sort of mission, if you will. It emphasizes creativity as a resource for resiliency and adaptability, and centers on 3 complementary aspects. Now we have more than 3, but it does center on 3. The collaborative, ever-changing art installation, which also acts as a reuse center, which is our showroom downstairs. A lending library of things that we're about to launch that will bring meaningful benefit to the neighboring communities, and a series of community workshops and events that will serve as a meeting place connecting creativity, sustainability, memory, shared knowledge, and compassion. So that really brings together also like what I'm interested as an artist and curator, and what Carrie's interested as an artist. So this, for those of you that are not here, this is what our storefront looks like. At least that's how it looked a few months ago. Now it looks slightly different because some things are gone because it is ever changing. And I wanted to go through each element of it. and you're gonna have to keep me on time. So, so I like to say when I'm like, our sort of elevator pitch is that we're a mashup between, because we kind of really have it all, except clothes and furniture pieces, because we just, clothes, there's a lot of other places that have clothes. I always recommend Lotus House or Dragonfly Thrift or Out of the Closet, to people when they try to bring that. When also books, we always send everybody to Bookleggers. I mean, we have a Bookleggers cart, and we'll accept like 1 or 2 books. But if people show up with like a whole like boxes, where like, no, go to Bookleggers. So, and then big furniture pieces, we just don't have the space for, so the way we think of it, the reason we think of it as an ever-changing installation is because, as you'll see when we go down for the tour, all of you that came in already saw this. It's not like a regular store where things are on shelves and on racks. Like, no, it's aesthetic chaos, I like to think of it. Because everything is placed. And I've had a lot of people come in here and say, oh, this is what thrift stores used to be like, that you used to have to like really find things. So it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt. We have some quote unquote sections, like we try to keep the fabric in one area or try to keep certain things, but it's not always the case. And so when we invite visitors, if they find something that they're interested in, they can take it home, and we invite them to pay what they value it to be worth within their budget. So that's a really key component. We don't put any prices on anything. So the goal is to keep things out of the landfill, and at the same time keep them, make them accessible to anybody, no matter their socioeconomic status. So it's hard. I'm trying to look at the camera and at all of you at the same time, so it's a little bit challenging. So I apologize to those on Zoom. Okay, so the other aspect is the lending library of things. So we're about to launch it. It's very exciting. I'm very excited about this part. We actually have like 8 items only on in the library now. They're all camping equipment, camping gear. But we have a bunch of other things. It just actually takes a long time to get it up on the system, because you have to like make sure it works, take a photograph. See, I've been studying like other library of things all over the country, all over the world actually, and see like what are people price it at, because we want to make things also accessible to everybody. So we've been trying to figure out like how to make things accessible, and so we do have like air mattresses, we have some tools, we have projectors, we have all sorts of things, and slowly they will get added to the library. The idea is that they're available to the community at large. So they're things like camping gear and like things that you don't necessarily use all the time, but that, like we had this guy that he was like our tester. He rented all this camping gear, and he's like, I have an apartment. Like, I don't want to buy all this stuff. Like, for maybe I go camping twice a year. Like, I'd much rather rent it. And he was like really happy with everything he took. He actually wanted more things that we just didn't have, but it's also for artists and that are making installations or working on theatrical or film productions. So like we have some things, like we got these cool suitcases that I posted on Instagram, and my collaborator was like, we need to put those in the library. Like, don't sell them because they're very cool. Like somebody might want to use them in an installation, or like maybe they're doing a film that they want something. So it's kind of a little bit of a combination of things, things that are very practical and things that are just very cool that might work for a set or an installation or whatnot. So this is a sample of our program. We're using a program called My Turn, that they work with a lot of different lending libraries, and these are the items that we have right now. We need better pictures, we know these things, but I mean, I'm of the philosophy, if you build it, it will come. And you just got to start, because if we waited to have all of this ready, like it would be next year. So this is sort of where we're at. So the other aspect of it is community workshops and events. So we're also about to launch, this is like kind of really an important moment that we are with the Things Lab. We're in the middle of launching all these things. We're about to start doing a series of workshops right here where you guys are physically. So we don't have a lot of space, but Pangia and I have talked about doing something here too. We already have a few people that are like, we're already talking to Carol Jazar about doing a collage workshop, also to Taryn Hipwell about doing a sewing workshop, and a series of other people. It's just, again, it's like getting all that organized, as you all know, takes time. So we're also going to offer the workshop at a sliding scale. But this is, I think, some of the challenges that I think all nonprofits sort of go through, but like, how do you make things accessible to the community, but also like stay afloat? And I'm sort of looking at things, and this is what I love, like input on, and ideas, we're, looking for grants and stuff like that, but also that takes up a lot of time. And right now it's difficult because we're building everything up. So we're like, so we got a basic grant from the county, like $5,000, not even $5,000. We just applied for another one. We've been finalists for a few things, but everybody, like, nobody got it. They were like, what exactly are they going to do? Like, we don't really get it, so that's been part of, our challenges. So I'm also looking at how do we balance with earned revenue, and try to make it work so that once we sort of have proof of concept, we then we'll start getting the grants, but at the same time, we're also getting some earned revenue. So, so for example, we want to offer scholarships to the workshops, but we right now, I don't think we can. Like, we're doing a sliding scale. We're going to experiment and see. And also, like, one of the instructors I'm talking about is actually wanting to donate their time. So in that sense, we'll probably offer maybe one more at the lower tier, because we're doing 3 tiers. And maybe we'll be able to offer a scholarship, but then also even defining, how do you define it?
Yeah. How you had mentioned doing an artist residency for like a week, like could you have like a free artist residency for each week or however many weeks? And then part of that deal is the artist has to do a workshop, which they won't get paid for, but you'll charge admission to.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like they get the residency, but you kind of get the workshop.
Right. Well, hopefully, I mean, I'm going to talk about that might be one.
I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. That might be one of the slides that's not complete because of my little situation earlier today. But yeah, I'm hoping actually we can get funding to pay an artist stipend. So that would be ideal, actually. But we also want to have skill building workshops like repairs, mending. We want to host repair cafes. We've already hosted our first shop and swap with Alexina. And we're already talking about doing more in the fall when it's cooler weather, because we don't have the space to do it inside. So we have to put up a tent, which is what we did last time. So the arts and community space is also basically this area where we're going to do the workshops. We posted already a few reading groups from Miami Reads, from the, I don't know if anybody's on the Miami's Not Atlantis chat, but there's like a subgroup which is called Miami Reads, and it's led by Greg Bloom. We've hosted a couple of our in-person meetings here, and that's when we've had the hybrid. Usually we have Kate Stein from London like coming in. We've also hosted several TFW, which is that Feeling When study group that's also climate focused, that's led by Fresh Tatuzzi, who's our resident artist, who, those of you that are here, this is her little small studio space, and then they use the common area as well. And then hosting meetings like this one. And we're looking at ways of doing that as well. Maybe down the line, doing it as part of the time swap, which I'll talk about in a minute, or maybe even just, once we're a little bit more, or, together, if you will, maybe hosting, like, charging like a small fee for meetings, and that could be also earned revenue for us. So the Miami Time Swap Generator, see, all of these things happened literally in the last few weeks, some of these things. So we just became Miami Time Swap Generator. And so I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it is an initiative, and maybe I didn't have some of the images to stay on Zoom.
Yeah,
it's coming up. Yeah,
it's the.
Yeah. Okay.
I meant to tell Katie.
Okay.
So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
What is this?
So Miami Time Swap is led by a few people, but including Chris and Elise from Finca Morada. And so the concept is an hour for hour. So what I love about this one, first of all, it really members, and then and the way it works is that like if people donate hours to us, we don't have to give, it's not a swap 1-for-1, so it's a network. So I think there's a nice visual here. Let me see. Maybe not, maybe it's in here. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. So, I may give Riza an hour, but then she doesn't have to give me an hour, or she could give Katie an hour, so it's yeah. So it's a thing like all over the world, and it's all, they use a network called Our World. And so but it's really very so the Miami time swap is and they're usually called time banks, but they really wanted to use the word swap, which I can appreciate. So that's what it is. So okay, so now are we back on full screen here or no?
Yeah. No.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Ooh, okay. So, and that's the website for it, and I can share it with you guys later. Okay, now let me see, because I can't even see my heading. Here we go. The Visiting Artist in Residence program. So we recently had our first visiting artist in residence, Alice Raymond. Actually, we have one of her artworks right there, which we'll show later. So it really happened very organically, and that's how a lot of things are happening with us. Like the Miami time swap was also very organic. So she's an artist that was here in Miami for some time, and I saw her at my collaborators opening, and we started talking. She's like, "Oh, I really miss having a studio," and I was like, "Well, why don't you check out the Things Lab? There's space, like you can work here." So she came the next day. We came over and she looked at the space, and we started talking. We were trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do? Like, am I going to charge you? Like, how do we make this work? And she said, well, why don't I just create things with your things here, and then you guys can keep the artwork and you can sell it if you want, and you could sell it the same way, pay what you value it to be worth. And I was like, you'd be cool with that? And she's like, yeah. So we're like, that's a great residency. So we don't know if, we haven't formalized it that it's going to be exactly like that, because not every artist might be interested in that. But at the same time, I'm interested in like making that the residency. That is also the challenge, like challenge the artist to work within these parameters, which is always interesting because you create different types of work, and then also what I really love about it is making the artwork accessible to everyone despite their socioeconomic status. Because then they can, and people get a little weird about that, even with like pieces of fabric here, because they're like, well, I don't want to give too, they never say don't want to give you too much, but they also don't want to give too much, so it does get, but it also makes people think about value and how much they value things. So it's also a conceptual project too at the same time. So this is, well, we're hoping to get funding for this so we can actually pay artists a small stipend for doing the residency as well, and then maybe we'll have them do a workshop. So whoops. Okay, so another thing that that has also happened fairly recently, we are looking at being like a sustainable arts partner, and doing something like removal and redistribution services. So a few months ago we did this collaboration with Juggernaut Theater Company. They were doing an immersive show called Conjuring the King, and they called me up. I wasn't necessarily thinking about it. They just called me up and they're like, hey, we have a bunch of things, we want to give it to Things Lab. And I'm like, I went to the show, like that's a lot of things. I'm like, I don't know if we can take it, like it's too many things. I'm like, well, what we could do is maybe go on site and try to sell some of the items the same way that we do it here, pay what you value, and then see how it works. I'm like, I'm willing to experiment if you're willing to experiment, and see how it goes. So we did that, and then we ended up splitting the proceeds. We learned a lot also in the we probably, I probably wouldn't do it in the future as pay what you value, because you got a lot of people that are not necessarily, like when people come here, they sort of understand the concept once you explain it, but outside of this context, it gets a little like it works and it doesn't work. So we'd have to reevaluate that. Now they didn't have money to hire us, so this is the way it worked. I said, well, I'll put in the labor and we'll figure it out. So we did that. So that's one model that I would do a little bit differently, because it required a lot of time and it was a lot of things. But the other model was I got a call from the Bass Museum, literally like 2 weeks ago. And they called me up because my collaborator had a show there. And we basically got rid of everything she had in the show because she had a lot of things. It sort of looked like this. And we went in and basically gave everything away, like with the chat that we have, which I'll mention in a minute, and a lot of other avenues that I went through. So they called us up and they're like, hey, we have a lot of items. Why don't we try to work with you? Why don't we hire you, the Things Lab, to basically redistribute all these things, if you think you can do it. So I was like, all right, let's see. So I went to see what it was. She sent me photos. And I was like, okay, well, it's a lot less than Carrie's show. So let's try it. So I said, I don't even know what I'm going to charge you because like, I've never done this before. So anyway, we did it. And then we came up with like, I came up with like how much time I spent, how many people I was like communicating with, my time off site, my time on site, came up with a rate, and then approached them and said, okay, this is what it would be. Does this work within your budget? Does it not? So we basically worked around it, and then I ended up giving them a discount so it would work with their budget. And they could hire us in the future because I'm like, I don't want you, to give you a high number and then they tell you that this is not feasible. Like, I'd rather it be something regular, because that way, otherwise they would have hired a junk truck and dumped all this stuff. So we distributed everything. So over 150 items, and I'm totally guesstimating there because there was everything from drywall to plywood to metal studs to pool liners, because they had like a little fountains inside the museum, mirrored panels. And yeah, we distributed to at least 20 people. At some point I was trying to keep count, but and so I was like, oh, this is a great model, that could bring in some money to help support the organization. So now I really, we're already talking to our institutions about doing something similar, because if they dump the items, this is a much better way to redistribute it, and like Emily worked with, it wasn't 3 points, it was ultra. It was ultra. Yeah. So I don't know how that worked out, but there might be even ways that we can collaborate. Emily, I'm looking at a camera, like I don't even know where she is. I know she's there somewhere. But it just, it worked really well, and the Bass was really happy because they're like, I mean, of course it looks good for them because then they're more sustainable, so I've already begun conversations with other museums and seeing, I mean, the smaller art spaces try to repurpose everything because that's how it works, right? But the bigger museums, they just have to get rid of it, and they also have to turn it around. And that's also what's happening with theater. Like some theater, like that's what happened with Juggernaut. They had to turn around that in a week, and so they would have had to call a junk truck or find places to distribute that, and not everybody picks up. So it became it's a thing. So we were able to get rid of so many things because we have a very active WhatsApp group that we just actually, again, in the last week or so, hit our capacity, which I learned was 1024. I didn't know that.
I know.
I know. And so we're basically, people post things for free or used item for sale. So we're going to use that as an opportunity to actually transition into a WhatsApp community and have separate groups. One that's only, because a few people have already given us that feedback. They're like, it's like an offer up, and a lot of people just want like the free things and the materials and like more things that artists are interested in. So we're going to do one that's just free and pay what you value. So, people can say like, just give me whatever you want for it. The same that we have it modeled, here. And then another one that's going to be used item for sales, because I think it's still valid. Like, I mean, people post, I mean, I posted things for sales. I think you did too. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Found some furniture. From
Yeah.
chat, definitely. Just a food chat.
Yeah. So
It's like, I'm gonna order anything that I have.
so that's so what we're thinking now, because we're also about to launch this membership, which is already in the works anyway, we're like, okay, so maybe in the one that's for sale, we ask people to become members and help support us. And that's why we want it to be a sliding scale also, to make it very accessible. So as little as $1 a month, which I think is very accessible, you know? So, and then, yeah. So, and then we're thinking of now, because we're having members, maybe we'll do one only for members, which probably only we communicate to do like little things, like maybe we'll post new items that come in, and the members get first dibs, you know, and maybe we open on Friday, I don't know, at 11, from 11 to 12 before we open, so they can have first dibs, or even reserve it by paying over, you know, in advance via our, you know, our QR codes and whatnot. And so then that's where the sliding scale membership, where right now we're testing with people in the group, and seeing, you know, to get feedback. But right now we really wanted to make it sliding scale, but also have different tiers. So it's sliding scale and tiers. So we have acquaintance at like $1 to $5 a month, which basically just gets you, you can be on the chat for the sale, which I need to update some of the language there. And it also gives you access to the lending library. So that's the reason that we were going to start the membership to begin with, was because of the lending library, because we had to find a way, like we couldn't just rent to anybody, because we need their credit card on file, because they're taking things that belong to us that conceivably that will always be returned, but like what if it doesn't get returned? Like we have to charge them for like something for it. So we had to find, and this system provides that. So we're like, okay, so the membership is going to be linked to that, even though it'll offer other perks. And somebody may become a member and never use the funding library, and that's fine. But you know, that's basically what was driving the membership initially, you know. And then we have a friend from $5 to $20 a month, and then the best friend, which is over $20. And again, it's sliding scale. And we're doing it by quarter for a number of different reasons. Ideally in the future, it'll be just a monthly, that was the idea, a monthly membership that automatically renews, but it's not possible right now. So it's every quarter now, and then people will just renew it on their own. And then we're also going to have it for organizations and for businesses. So those are the collaborators and the partners. And we're looking at the nonprofit. We're looking at, you know, starting at $25. Actually, it's missing a plus, I'm just saying. And also the collaborator can be a small business, you know. So, you know, I mean, there's so many small businesses here, like artisans, like, but if they want it as a business, you know, we would treat them the same as a nonprofit. And then the partner would be more like corporate sponsorship. But you know, if, you know, I don't know, if Netflix wants to rent some things for us for you know, film or something, like, I mean, we've had a couple of more independent films, but once we grow, we may have other people that want to rent things like that. So we want to have an avenue for them to support us as well. And also they could be just a corporation that wants to support us. And, you know, we're still figuring out, like, you know, more like perks and things like that for them. I think that brings me to the end. Yeah. And then follow us. We're on Instagram, The Things Lab Miami, and on Facebook, The Things Lab, which might be changed to The Things Lab Miami soon, but, and we're developing our website. It's very basic right now. It lives on Carrie Phillips's, my collaborator's website, as one page. But we're working with a web developer now. That is, that he was part of the original project from Prelude, so he knows the whole history of our project, to really, you know, elaborate. And we have other ideas also for the website too. Like we want to collect stories from people, like items that they've gotten and how they've used them, you know, especially like if artists repurpose things, you know, not just artists, you know, it could, because the oral stories are also important. So we've even talked about maybe doing a podcast in the future, if we can get some funding for it and have people tell stories, maybe not of things that they got here, but just even like, you know, we have connections to objects, you know, and tell stories about that. So there's a lot of things in the works for the online, the virtual platform as well. And we want to do some sort of events like that too here. Like I would love to do like a spoken word event that's just that, about if you bring your object, you know, like a storytelling night of like why this object is important and meaningful to you. So things like that. It's kind of what we're thinking.
Was it you that was talking about once you start collecting stories, that it's like a lending library and they use it for like a film that takes off, and then when people rent it, it'll say this was used by this celebrity, and then, like, the value go up a ton and help you raise more money.
Well, we did have one incident. I mean, we had several times that this has happened, but I just remember one. There was an artist that came here and found a backpack, and they were like, oh, I want to take this, I'm going to buy this backpack. And I was like, oh, that belonged to an artist that I used to work for, that was the founder of the Harpo Foundation that I'm a part of. And I sort of told her about this artist, Ed Levine, and she was like, oh my God, she was like, I'm going to love this backpack so much more, and so it was really cool just because, like, I don't know the history of all of the objects, obviously, but the ones that I do, like, I do tell them, or if somebody tells me the story, like, for example, we just got, that's why it's a little messy downstairs. We got tons of fabric donations. And as I point to Pangea, and if I've only emptied one box, like I have, it's all piling up there. And that came from an artist, Alyssa Alonso, whose mother passed away a few months ago, and she works a lot with fabric. And so she brought not only the fabric, but she brought these really cool, those suitcases. She brought this old phone that we're like, I think that should go in the lending library too. Like these, really interesting things, so so those, like, I know a little bit of that story, like I can tell somebody that, so that also changes, how, I hope everybody can hear me, so it's unstable. But anyway, yeah, so we'll so that's also very cool. When people come here, usually I spend a lot of time, and Carrie does too, talking to people, because it's not like just when you go to a Target, you just buy things, like you're really engaged, and like, what are they looking at? Why are they looking for this object? Or maybe they just come. I mean, we've had a few people just from Google find us. This woman came in on Saturday, and she like, her whole family's in the car, and she's like, I love, and I'm like, how'd you find it? She's like, oh, I was Googling. And so I explained the whole project, and then she loved it. And then she like bought a bread box, for like $20. I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. So you just never know, but you get all these, you get to, she's like, no, I really just love going and finding little things, so you just engage. I think it's about that engagement also, at least for us, it's part of the project, so I think that's it. I hope it's raining right over here.
We can look at the screen, just.
And then we're going down the stairs. You can see. And so, like I said earlier, this is aesthetic chaos. This is everything we just got in. So this is normally does not look this messy. But here we have just lots of things. I mean, there's really no tour per se. Like, it's just like you really have to come and peruse, and every time it's a little bit different because things get purchased and we receive things all the time. So it's always morphing. And like we just got this in, so that's like blocking other things, but it's great, like boards, that could be used for all sorts of things. Oh, my screen again. No, this is normally it should be, I guess it turned off because it was, we have our slides up there, like saying what the Things Lab is and whatnot. And then here we have paper. It just came in.
Cool.
All sorts
Lots
of
of
things.
fabric.
Yeah, lots of fabrics. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then through that door is basically just storage, and our lending library will be there.
So cool.
This
This would be great too for like influencers who want to make like videos for Instagram, like
that's a good idea.
to come in and they can, because people are always looking for, I don't know, quirky items.
Right.
So